Please welcome the President and Chief Executive Officer of Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan, Dan Loepp.
Shake your hand.
Thank you. Well, it's been an exciting couple of months. I have to say, when I was watching the State of the State, I was struck the metaphor that you put out with Dan Camel at the beginning of the address really, I think, drives right to your point about the grit and the you won't take no for an answer. And I think it's reflective of what we've seen out of Alliance, but I think it's reflective of what's going on in the state too. One of the things that struck me about the budget, it is, I assume by design, very multi-generational in the sense of, we all have, as you do, as I do, with families in about 3 different generations. And the budget really takes different places for different people at different times. How does doing that, and how does that impact, our competitiveness, would you say, around the world and around the country?
I think every employer in this room, every person in this room is thinking about how do we make sure that Michigan's competitive and how we attract talent into Michigan and keep talent here, whether it's my kids who are at the University of Michigan right now and they're going to be making decisions about where to build their lives in the coming years, or it is a young person who grew up in Grand Rapids and is maybe at Ohio State University. I mean, questionable judgment there, but how do we get them to come back to Michigan? Or how do we get people who went off to Silicon Valley to bring their talent back to Michigan and make sure that Detroit and the greater Detroit area is a place where people want to come to. We are an older state. We do have a lot of people who are living their golden years here in Michigan, and that's a wonderful thing. But we got to make sure that we've got the schools to support young families, that we've got the policies that young people are looking for. It's not just about my kids, but I often use them as an example. My daughters, were waiting to see what would happen with reproductive rights. My oldest is a lesbian, and her decision about where to make her life is going to be dependent on whether or not she's got full protections and rights under the law. And as her mom, I want her to live in a state where she can live her true self and be successful, and I want that for every person. It's not just about my kids, right? So whether it's age-friendly policies where you can age in place and have the supports that you need, or it is for people in their 50s like I am to make sure that Michigan is competitive and there are job opportunities and upskilling chances for people who maybe see their job going away but have got a lot of years in them where they can be productive and need a good job, but they just need some skills. Whereas for young people to come too, our budget is a statement of who we are. It is a statement of our values. And that's why these investments from early childhood and daycare to age-friendly policies, every person's important in this state.
Yeah, definitely. The other thing I want to ask you about is, and I know you can't talk about what's coming in an hour and a half, but we'll all see it when it comes. But I think I've been struck too by the amount of economic, the MEDC has really stepped up in the work that they've done and what Quentin's done. And as you become this battery hub, it also will mean you're going to continue to manufacture cars around that battery hub. And I don't want to talk about any specifics because I know you can't, but long-term impact is enormous.
It is, and I think one of the things, having been in the legislature, I've got a lot of respect for the people that run and serve in our House and Senate. And it is a whirlwind. There are a lot of brand new members. Last term, when I was working with Republican leadership, they were in the majority in both chambers, I was really trying to get Democrats to embrace our economic development strategy, and it was difficult. There's no slam dunks in the legislature, and there are people on the ends and on the spectrum who are going to oppose economic development no matter what. So it's about talking to and doing the best we can to educate people. But in EVs, the heaviest part of the car is now the battery. And so if we're not making batteries, all the other components can move to where the battery is made. And that's why we've got to compete and we've got to win battery plants and opportunities. And so the mindset that, oh, these companies have always been here, they always will be, is something that we've got to overcome. And so everyone in this room, I think, can be helpful in that, in the conversations that you're having, in the education effort. But we don't, despite our rich history in mobility, we don't have a lock on the future of mobility. We have to compete and we have to win. And economic development was not my forte. Right. Before I became governor. And now, I'm in a position where I see what we are up against. I see what other states are offering. Michigan is one of only 2 states in the country that can't throw cash at a company. I mean, think about this. Mississippi, they throw $400 million of cash at companies. We are not allowed to do that. So what we can do is have a great workforce. We can have great partnerships. We can have sites that are ready. We can do a lot of things around R&D, other ways to make sure that Michigan's competitive. And we've been successful in doing that, but we have to work at it every single day.
Yeah, it's nothing taking for granted, because anybody can go anywhere at any time if they choose, so, including businesses. Talk a little bit, you mentioned it in your remarks, you did make a significant effort to move to bipartisanship in your first term. This is a different ballgame now, because it's the first time, if I remember correctly, since 1982, when the Democrats controlled both houses of the legislature, which is many generations ago. But as you said, it's essential to getting things done. How do you transcend this to get to the point you want to get to? Because it's not easy.
No, and right after the election, so this is my lucky place right here, Motor City, is where we gathered both my elections and had great outcomes both. I'm so grateful to the people of Michigan for giving me a chance to do this for 4 more years. I truly am. I also am cognizant that while we've made history with the win and flipping both chambers of our legislature, it's only happened 4 times in 130 years in Michigan. And as you said, the last time was 40 years ago. So I'm cognizant that it is a 2-seat majority. It's not a mandate. And I have told my friends in the legislature, I don't want to hear anyone using that word. It's an affirmation that we're focused on the right things. And we've got to stay focused on the right things. Yes, we do what we said we were going to do. We live our values. But I still expect and want the vast majority of things that get to my desk to be bipartisan supported. I took an oath to serve every person in the state. I'm going to, I know we're not all going to agree on everything all the time, but I think that we're better when there's a diverse group of people with a diverse group of opinions and vantage points and experiences around the table. And that's why, tomorrow we'll have a quadrant meeting, and I'll be bringing little Valentine's cookies for all 4 of them. And I'm not baking them though. I'm trying to get some goodwill, so that would be counterproductive. But if we're not talking to one another, we're never going to be able to find common ground. And so this slim majority I'm grateful for, and these are wonderful leaders. Nothing's going to be easy. It never is, and that's okay. We just got to partner and roll up our sleeves and do the work.
Great. I'm going to flip over to healthcare, which is a passion of yours. It certainly is a passion of mine, in making sure people have affordable healthcare. One of the things you mentioned is the cost of insulin, and I know the president mentioned it in his State of the Union address. We've been working with our folks to make sure our customers have more affordable, because it's hitting everybody. I just wanted you, if you want to comment on where you go with this, what you do.
I think, I think a place where we're really aligned is we're just trying to make sure that every person can improve the quality of their health through greater access to the medicines that they need to live. We are not the healthiest state in the nation. We've got work to do, and whether it's education or accessibility or ensuring that there's equitable opportunity, not just for grocery stores, but for jobs and for income, all of these things are related. And that's why, the cost of insulin is remarkably high compared to around the rest of the world.
Right.
And so I think that states can lead and that we should, but always, mindful of how do we increase access. And this is one area, but maternal health and equities around maternal health, this is something that we've been focused on. Sickle cell, there are a lot of different things in the budget that we have really tried to put some emphasis on and solve for, because this is what perpetuates the inequitable outcomes for people.
Right, and if you don't do it early, the results 10 years from now end up costing billions of dollars to everyone, let alone bad health. So both of those things, that's right. Let's talk about Detroit a little bit. Obviously, and you mentioned this, that the state is inextricably tied to Detroit, like it or not for some people, but mostly like it for all the people in this room, I would say. What do you sense, your sense of core cities? Because it's not just Detroit. It's Lansing, it's Grand Rapids, it's Flint, it's Saginaw, of what we can do for core cities moving forward.
So as we wrote this budget, we stayed focused on, I think, the fundamentals, right? I still think that there's work to do when it comes to transit and transportation, but I'm not leading with that. I think that's got to be a locally led effort, but one that I do think would be helpful. The education budget, in the midst of everything the last 4 years, I feel like, we've all had so much crises to confront that maybe some of the pieces of what we accomplished aren't generally known. But one of the things I'm really pleased with and proud of is that in the midst of everything, we closed the gap between school districts. So there was this historic gap where, just as an example, Detroit Public Schools got less money per child than districts in Oakland County. Not all districts, because Pontiac, right, there's discrepancies even within Oakland County, we know. But we closed that gap. 4 governors had worked on it, but we got it done in the middle of the pandemic with a Republican-led legislature. We were able to do that. Now, that's equal, but we built in equity on top of that by putting more resources into English language learners and kids with special needs, kids at risk, CTE programs. These are things that we create that equitable opportunity. So that's a piece of addressing a lot of the issues in our bigger cities. But it's also, I think, a real start, long overdue start. Now, there's more work to do to improve outcomes, and that's got to be where we all partner and lock arms, because our outcomes are lagging. They did pre-pandemic, and the pandemic was a massive setback. In an ordinary summer, there's a learning loss for all kids from June to September. It's always bigger for kids in tougher socioeconomic situations. The pandemic dwarfs the average summer. And so there's going to be a lot of work to get kids back on track. And that's why I didn't even tee it up that way, but My Kids Back on Track is the individualized tutoring program that we have funded in this budget so that our kids can get the individualized teaching and tutoring that they need.
Yeah, oftentimes that's the difference between success and failure, that if you can get that intense. I've seen it, so I think it's a great part of the budget. Talk about the SOAR fund a little bit, and I know that's already attracted several heavy investments. Where does that go from here? Well,
I'm trying to make sure that we've got a perpetual source to ensure that the SOAR fund we've got the tools we need to compete. Right now, we've been making individual appropriations. It's cumbersome, it can be slow, it can get caught up in politics. And as we think about kind of the bigger picture in Michigan being competitive and ensuring that we get the opportunity, and it's not just big projects, these are dollars that can be used for upskilling, that can be used to help businesses of a variety of sizes all across the state. Having a sustainable source of resources for it is really important. So that's one of the things that I'm trying to work on with the legislature right now.
Great. I noticed over the weekend there was a story around, and the last couple of weeks, around the fighter squadron at Selfridge, and I know you happen to be in Washington this weekend, and How's that going?
So we know that the Air Force is making determinations about where to recapitalize fighter missions. We are fortunate to have people like Senator Peters in the important position he's in, Senator Stabenow. They have been fierce advocates for Michigan for a long time. From Carl Levin to Debbie Stabenow to Gary Peters, we've got some of the best people we could ask for. We also know that they're not going to do, they don't plan at the moment to do one for one. So they retire a mission and then they replace a mission. So it's a competitive moment. We've hosted the Air Force many times. Secretary Kendall was here. We showed him around Selfridge. We had incredible partnership from our delegation to Hackle and Candace Miller, who we tagged in, and a variety of local leaders to show that we are all in. And when you look at Camp Grayling to Alpena to Battle Creek to Selfridge, we got something to offer no one else can. 4-season training, incredible airspace, international airspace and water as well. And I think after what happened yesterday, maybe strengthens our case. But we're working really hard to make sure that as they reinvest in fighter missions that we have one. It's important to our defense economy, it's important to our homeland security. So for all these reasons, we pulled out all the stops, we've gotten their attention. We even put an ad in Stars and Stripes, which is a magazine everyone in the military reads, and I got a call right after that happened. So we got their attention, and I'm working over the administration, and I know that Senator Stabenow and Peters are doing an incredible amount of work too to make sure we get that mission.
Yeah, it's a big deal. If we can pull it off, that'd be great. One question, you were on a trade mission to Northern Europe and spoke at the Davos conference. Talk about that a little bit, how that was and how Michigan was taken, for example.
It was really interesting. So I did some economic development meetings before the Davos conference, and I was in Oslo, Norway. You'll love this story. I was meeting with a company called Hydro Norsk, and they have an investment in Cassopolis, Michigan. And I was meeting with all the leadership of Hydro Norsk. They want to grow, but we're competing with other states. They've got a presence in some other states. And I said, tell me, why Cassopolis? Like, what was it? And they said, well, they were very complimentary of our MEDC and the team that was working it. They said, but it was one conversation that really was powerful. It was the city manager from Cassopolis, Michigan. And I share that with you because what an incredible thing to learn. We're going to be acknowledging the city manager, but I think that it's really tells you how that from the granular to the partnership at the state level to all the work that we're doing can be impactful. And that's why I say, Michiganders are humble, and it's a wonderful quality, but we should have a little swagger like the Texans do, because we got a lot to offer. And if every one of us is on Team Michigan and telling the story, I don't see how anyone can beat us. We also had dinner that night at a restaurant. Oh yeah, thanks. That's for the city manager of Cassopolis. So later that night, we had a bite to eat with another company that we were courting, and we looked at the menu, and Founders Beer out of Grand Rapids, Michigan was on the menu. In Oslo, which of course we pointed out to show Michigan is a world-class place. But the Davos thing was very interesting. When the list of who was attending came out, we were inundated. People wanted to talk to us about what was happening in Michigan. And so I took that as a really wonderful sign that people are taking notice. The one thing I didn't anticipate was that as a governor from a state in the United States, I would have to be the one to defend the CHIPS Act and the Inflation Reduction Act, which the Europeans, they're all thrilled that we're in the competition again and we're leading into clean energy and climate, but they didn't really like the competition at the same time, and I just laughed and defended it. But I'm proud of what we were able to accomplish, and the interest in Michigan, we have done a ton of follow-up, and I think it's going to, that's how things happen.
Yeah, right,
so
absolutely.
It was really eye-opening.
That's great. That's super. Well, we're just about out of time, so any other comments you have for the crowd?
I thank you for Sandy and the Chamber for the incredible work that you do, and all the members of this organization. When I say if we're all selling Team Michigan, we can't lose, I mean it. And so I'm grateful for the work that you do and really excited about what I think is on the horizon for us all. So thank you, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Great. Thanks, Governor, for your time.